Welcome to Gray Matter Reports. Today we decode the complex reality of events that unfold around us. The clock struck midnight when the first flicker of chaos ignited. It began as a whisper among the townsfolk, a curious incident, an anomaly. An individual, once considered a pillar of the community, had crossed an invisible threshold. The descent into obsession unfolded with chilling precision, a case study ripe for analysis. Reports flooded in, detailing erratic behaviors. Neighbors described the individual as withdrawn, a shadow of their former self. They had become an antisocial profile, retreating into a world constructed from obsessive thoughts. This shift was not sudden, it was a gradual deterioration, a slow unspooling of the mind. Behavioral economics suggests that irrational decisions often stem from an emotional core. Here, emotions had taken the helm, steering the individual toward an abyss. The police report indicated peculiarities. Biological evidence hinted at a struggle against unseen forces. Friends recounted conversations that spiraled into rants, fixations on trivial matters, and an insatiable need for control. Each interaction deepened the chasm between the individual and their realities, reinforcing the belief that the world was a chessboard, and they were both player and pawn. In the days leading up to the incident, the individual's fixation intensified. They began collecting data, meticulously cataloging behaviors of those around them. This was not merely observation, it was an obsessive analysis, a desperate attempt to find patterns in the chaos of everyday life. The line between rational inquiry and delusion blurred. As dusk fell on the eve of the incident, the individual stood at the precipice. The town was oblivious, wrapped in the mundane rituals of existence. Yet the air crackled with tension, a palpable unease that went unnoticed. Inside the mind of the individual, calculations were being made. Each thought spiraled deeper, a vortex of paranoia and obsession. Then came the moment of revelation, an act that would etch itself into the annals of the town's history. It was a culmination of weeks, perhaps months, of internal conflict. The individual, driven by an insatiable urge to assert control, executed a plan that defied reason. In that instant, the community shattered, and the reverberations would echo long after. The case concluded with a grim realization. Obsession had morphed from a mere psychological state into a catalyst for irreversible change. The incident was not just a point in time. It became a lens through which to examine the fragile boundaries of the human psyche. As the town grappled with the fallout, the analysis of this descent into obsession had only just begun. The incident marked a turning point. An unsettling ripple coursed through the community, igniting an obsession that would consume many. It began with whispers, fragments of conversations spiraling into a cacophony of speculation. Individuals dissected the event, stripping it down to its bare components, as if understanding could unravel the chaos. Obsessions often sprout from a singular seed of intrigue. In this case, it was the perplexing behavior of the subject. An antisocial profile emerged, characterized by erratic tendencies and a profound disconnect from societal norms. This individual became the focal point, a case study that both fascinated and repulsed. The community's psyche fractured, and the more they scrutinized, the more they unwittingly fed the obsession. Behavioral economics posits that human decisions are often influenced by cognitive biases. In the wake of the incident, confirmation bias took hold. Individuals sought out information that reinforced their existing beliefs, cherry-picking facts as if they were pieces of a puzzle. Social media platforms became echo chambers, amplifying the fervor. Posts morphed from casual observations into fervent analyses, each comment dripping with speculation. The obsession deepened. The subject's life was dissected like a specimen under a microscope. Every detail became fodder for discussion. Childhood memories, interpersonal relationships, the mundane transformed into the extraordinary. People began to see themselves reflected in this individual's story, projecting their fears and desires onto an unknowing canvas. This mirroring effect created a cycle of fascination, perpetuating the obsession. As the narrative unfolded, the clinical detachment eroded. The community became entwined in a web of shared anxiety. They were not mere observers, they were participants in a collective psychological experiment. The incident had ignited a primal urge to understand, to control the narrative, and in doing so, they lost sight of their own identities. In this somber landscape, Behavioral economics reveals a stark truth. The more one fixates, the more elusive clarity becomes. The line between understanding and obsession blurred, creating a labyrinth from which there seemed to be no escape. Each revelation only deepened the chasm, drawing individuals further into an abyss of speculation. The obsession was no longer confined to the subject. It became a living entity, feeding on fear and curiosity. What began as an inquiry morphed into a relentless pursuit, leading to unforeseen consequences. In this clinical analysis of human behavior, the descent into obsession proved to be as dangerous as the incident itself. The incident reverberated through the community like a stone cast into still water. Ripples spread, distorting the familiar landscape of lives once tranquil. Fear became a currency, traded in hushed whispers and furtive glances. Individuals previously unacquainted now shared a bond forged in suspicion and unease. As days turned into weeks, the impact began to manifest in unexpected ways. Small businesses reported a decline in foot traffic. The cafe, once a hive of conversation, now saw patrons clutching their coffees, eyes darting toward the door. This change was not merely economic, it was an emotional contagion. The community's collective psyche had absorbed the incident, and the fallout was palpable. Psychological studies often draw parallels between economic behavior and social dynamics. When a community experiences trauma, it undergoes a shift akin to a market crash. Confidence erodes, and individuals retreat into their shells, mirroring the defensive strategies of an economic downturn. The antisocial profile of the individuals involved began to dominate discussions. Speculation turned into caricatures of paranoia. Isolation became the new norm. Neighborhood gatherings dwindled. Events that once celebrated unity transformed into gatherings steeped in tension. Parents kept their children indoors, their laughter stifled by the weight of uncertainty. Children, in turn, internalized this fear, their innocence tainted by the shadows of grown-up concerns. The media seized upon the narrative, amplifying the ripple effect. News reports, reminiscent of a clinical case study, dissected the incident, feeding the community's fixation. Each broadcast heightened the sense of vulnerability. The public's fascination morphed into an obsession, creating a feedback loop of anxiety. Behavioral economics reminds us that loss aversion can manifest in myriad ways. Individuals weighed the perceived risks of their daily activities against the backdrop of the incident. Choices became fraught with hesitation. A simple trip to the grocery store morphed into a calculated risk assessment. In the quiet hours of the night, sleepless minds pondered the implications. The incident had not only shaken the foundation of trust, but had also ignited a relentless pursuit of understanding. The desire to dissect the motivations of those involved became an obsession in itself. Yet as the community grappled with its collective trauma, a deeper question emerged. Could they ever reclaim the simplicity of their former lives? The ripples continued to spread, leaving an indelible mark on the societal fabric. The psychological scars would linger long after the incident faded from the headlines, a reminder of the fragility of the human experience. Fear is a primal force, a biological response rooted deep within the human psyche. It triggers the fight-or-flight mechanism, igniting a cascade of physiological reactions. Heart rates spike, pupils dilate, the body readies itself for action or retreat. Yet, in the aftermath of the incident, fear morphed into something far more complex, an insidious obsession that consumed minds and distorted realities. The individual at the center of this turmoil exhibited classic signs of an antisocial profile. The initial shockwaves of fear rippled through the community, creating a fertile ground for paranoia. To understand this phenomenon, we must delve into the psychology of fear and its capacity to reshape perceptions. When the brain is enveloped in fear, rational thought diminishes. Decisions become skewed. Opportunities for social connection dissolve into isolation. Behavioral economics posits that fear alters our perception of risk and reward. The aftermath of the incident saw individuals recalibrating their value systems. Trust eroded. Neighbors became potential threats. The environment morphed into a labyrinth of suspicion, where every shadow seemed to harbor danger. The fear of the unknown became a more potent adversary than any tangible threat. As the weeks wore on, the community's collective psyche spiraled. Individuals fixated on biological evidence, obsessively piecing together fragments of information. Each rumor, each whisper, became currency in a dark economy of anxiety. In their quest for understanding, they often overlooked the very real consequences of their obsession. Relationships frayed, daily routines were disrupted. Lives were altered irrevocably. The mind, when gripped by fear, often constructs narratives to regain a semblance of control. In this case, the narratives were laced with distortion. The subject of the incident became a specter, an embodiment of all that was feared. The community's obsession with understanding the why eclipsed their ability to heal. They sought clarity but found only confusion. Fear also breeds conformity. Individuals began to echo one another's sentiments, reinforcing a cycle of dread. Groupthink took hold. The louder the fear, the less room there was for dissenting voices. The clinical detachment of a behavioral economist reveals a stark truth. In times of crisis, the collective mindset can often spiral, leading to irrational behaviors that prioritize survival over reason. In the end, the psychology of fear is a double-edged sword. It can protect us, but it can also ensnare us in an intricate web of obsession. As the community grappled with the fallout of the incident, they found themselves caught between the urge to understand and the instinct to flee. The line between safety and paranoia blurred, leaving only echoes of what once was. In the aftermath of the incident, social media became a powerful echo chamber, amplifying every nuance of public sentiment. The algorithms, cold and calculating, transformed individual grief into a collective spectacle. Each post, each tweet acted like a drop of ink in water, swirling and expanding, distorting reality into an endless loop of outrage and fascination. Users, drawn to the story like moths to a flame, dissected the incident with a fervor that belied the sorrow behind the headlines. Hashtags emerged, morphing into virtual talismans of solidarity and condemnation. The digital landscape became a battleground where opinions clashed and alliances formed, all while the true complexities of human behavior lay buried beneath layers of curated content. As the narrative spread, it shifted from mere reporting to a form of performance art. Individuals crafted personas, embodying roles that ranged from the righteous defender of moral integrity to the cynical observer, each vying for attention in a space where virality eclipsed authenticity. This social theater, driven by the dopamine rush of likes and shares, fed an insatiable appetite for sensationalism. The psychological implications were profound. In behavioral economics, the phenomenon is known as herding, where individuals align their behaviors with a larger group. This resulted in a kind of mob mentality, where dissenting voices were drowned out by the overwhelming desire for conformity. The desire to belong, to partake in the collective narrative, overshadowed the critical evaluation of facts. Truth became malleable, shaped by the whims of the crowd. Within this maelstrom, the subject of the incident was reduced to a mere symbol. The individual's identity was stripped away, leaving behind an abstract representation of fear and fascination. It was a disconcerting reminder of how easily humanity could devolve into a faceless mass, driven by primal instincts rather than reason. The clinical detachment of online interactions belied the emotional weight of the event, creating a disconnect that further fueled obsession. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock faded, yet the engagement persisted. This addiction to the narrative became a coping mechanism, a way to navigate the complexity of emotions stirred by the incident. Behavioral economists would argue that this cycle of reinforcement, where engagement leads to more engagement, creates a feedback loop, perpetuating a state of obsession. In this digital age, the line between reality and artifice blurred. The incident was no longer just an event, it had evolved into a phenomenon, a haunting reminder of the dark corners of human psychology. In the end, the amplification through social media revealed not only the fragility of individual identity, but also the collective psyche's capacity for obsession. The aftermath of the incident reverberated through the community, echoing like a relentless metronome. Lives fractured, relationships strained, and the fabric of trust unraveled. As the dust settled, a deeper understanding emerged. Behavioral economics would serve as the lens through which to analyze the psychological and social ramifications of obsession. In the days following, a series of interviews unveiled a troubling pattern. Individuals once content became ensnared in a web of fixation. The subject's actions, while extreme, mirrored a broader phenomenon. Decision-making became distorted, influenced by cognitive biases that skewed perception. The allure of certainty clashed violently with the chaos of reality. Anchoring bias gripped many. They clung to the initial narratives spun by media and peers, unable to recalibrate their mental frameworks. The individual at the center of this maelstrom had become a symbol, a dark mirror reflecting societal fears. The obsession with their story overshadowed critical thinking, leading to misguided actions and irrational judgments. In a clinical sense, the escalation of these behaviors can be likened to a contagion of the mind. Social proof played a pivotal role. As more individuals expressed their fascination, others followed suit. The herd mentality surged, drowning out reason. It was a nuanced dance of influence, one in which empathy was replaced by curiosity tinged with dread. Lessons emerged from this chaos, stark and unyielding. First, the importance of delineating between sensationalism and reality became evident. A clear distinction must be made, lest society continue to spiral into a collective obsession that undermines stability. The narratives crafted around the individual transformed them into more than a mere subject. They became an archetype of fear, an embodiment of the unknown. Second, the role of emotional regulation cannot be overstated. As individuals grappled with their feelings, the need for mental resilience surfaced. Strategies must be developed to foster healthy coping mechanisms, allowing for a more grounded response to societal crises. Understanding the triggers of emotional response could serve as a protective barrier against future obsessions. Finally, the value of critical discourse cannot be ignored. Engaging in open conversations about the psychological impacts of such incidents will pave the way for healing. Communities must learn to dissect their narratives, to understand the underlying motivations that drive them toward obsession. Only through this collective introspection can we hope to move forward, to reclaim our narratives from the abyss of fixation. As the community begins to heal, the lessons learned from the incident linger. They serve as a stark reminder of the power of the mind and the necessity of vigilance in a world all too prone to descent into obsession.